We talk a lot about entrepreneurship, about fixing things that are broken in the world. Like, how is this relevant philosophy for entrepreneurs? And you said it encourages you to be in the public sphere. Does it encourage you to be an entrepreneur? What does it encourage you to do if you follow this?
It's actually funny. So the founding of Stoicism begins by an entrepreneur. His name is Zeno. He's a Tyrian dye merchant. So he's a Phoenician. They pick up this purple dye, which is a valuable commodity at that time. They would travel across the
wasn't it made with some kind of like shells or something?
The slaves would break up this, again, slavery, a constant in history, would break up the shells of these sea snails, and it would dry out and create this purple dye. And so he's it's
the equivalent work of the people who make their shorts on YouTube today.
He's from a family of merchants traveling in the Mediterranean, suffers a shipwreck, loses everything, washes up in Athens penniless, and he walks into a bookstore and he hears the bookseller reading the story of Hercules at the crossroads, the choice between virtue and vice. And this sets him on this philosophical journey. And he would joke later that he made a great fortune when he suffered a shipwreck, because it turned him into philosophy, into something else. The idea of the obstacle is the way.
You maybe could have invented insurance instead, but that's a whole other framework.
but what I love about it is, first off, it's this idea we don't control what happens to us, we control how we respond to it, right? Yeah. Like, he loses everything, reinvents his life as a result of it. But what I think is fascinating about it, the Stoa Poikile, the painted porch, which he founds and where Stoicism comes from, the Stoa, he sets up in the middle of the Athenian agora, right? Like, it's not, just again, it's not this monastery, it's not this place removed. It's where it's in the marketplace of ideas and people.
I love the marketplace of ideas. It's the marketplace.
Yes, literally so. And so,
is that where it comes from? I didn't thought of it that way. To give people in the marketplace who are philosophers. So. That's fascinating. Yeah.
And I love the idea that he's not a trained academic. He's not coming from a place of fortune or success. He's coming at it from rock bottom. He turns to philosophy and it changes his life, and he changes the world as a result. But I think there's a reason then that entrepreneurs and business people and leaders and people of all types have been turning to that philosophy, because that's what we're all doing, which is responding to, the raw material that life gives us.
So I'm interested, you obviously have a lot of empathy for people tearing down statues of bad people that shouldn't be up, of critiquing people who need to be critiqued. In 1980s, we had these big rallies at Stanford. I think was one of the first schools where I think Jesse Jackson was saying, hey, ho, ho, Western Civ has got to go. And we basically stopped teaching all this wisdom, stopped teaching a lot of this history that you care a lot about. And obviously you're probably empathetic to some of their concerns, but like, did they go too far? What were they missing? Like, how is their philosophy flawed? And to get rid of this?
I think you can trace a little bit of the mess that we're in now to the tearing down of those ideas and the failure to replace it with something else, right? So like, the lost cause mythology is clearly wrong, clearly unhealthy. But what is then the story of, say, the America coming out of the Civil War, right? Are we an irredeemably racist and flawed and evil nation? Or was it actually, a bunch of people who learned a lesson coming out of the Civil War, who were struggling against the notions of their time, trying to make America better, who almost got there and fell short, right? Like, what do you take from the story of a country or a nation? Is it one of hope, right? Of incremental progress, or is it of, irredeemable, irreconcilable flaws? I see flaws in the Stoics that have to be faced and dealt with, but I also see, like, if you throw the baby out with the bathwater, if you lose what's good in it, you're lost. There's actually a protest at Brown University the last couple of years. They wanted to pull down, there's an equestrian statue of Marcus Aurelius on campus.
Really?
And they wanted to pull it down because they felt it was a monument to colonialization.
Marcus Aurelius was a monument to colonialization.
Yeah, because the Roman Empire had colonies. So it's like,
wow.
On the it's
I mean, there's lots of other things you can criticize Romans for too, but that's interesting.
No, but it's like, and on the one hand, like, their heart is kind of in the right place, right? In the sense that, like, colonialism is exploitative and not great and responsible for all sorts of evil. But it's like punishing a guy who is dead for 2,000 years, who had an entirely different conception of how the world operates. Like it's not even the same. It's not even the same
No, it's not even
colonialism.
related.
This is what Rome is doing is not the same as King Leopold is doing, right? And there's also 20 centuries between the two.
I might have punished him for those really cool sea battles where they'd flood like a coliseum and they'd make people fight on ships and kill each other for entertainment.
Can you imagine?
I mean, it was really cool, but it's obviously like you should do that to people. But I mean, there's lots of things to punish him for. That's interesting that was their framework.
It's strange, right? So, but what I take from that is people that viewpoint is someone who has not actually read anything about Roman history or anything from Marcus Aurelius.
They don't have a nuanced perspective at all on this stuff.
And when you read Marcus Aurelius, you see a guy talking repeatedly about the common good. He talked about the idea of cosmopolitanism. Like, actually, most of the good stuff that's in today's world has its precedent there.
Well, this seems like even the Jesse Jackson stuff in the 80s seems like it comes in many ways from just not being as educated on the positives here, not really having a nuanced, deep perspective on these things.
Yeah. I think, look, the classics have been used to do immense good and also been responsible in rationalizations or justifications for immense evil. The solution to that is not to be ignorant of the classics, right? It's to understand the good and the bad in the classics.
The thing that struck me about this Britannica series from the 50s that was supposed to be a summary of knowledge at the time was that their view of civilization was that we've had this great conversation going on for 2,000 years in the West that's built upon itself. And that's a unique identifier of what Western civilization is this great conversation. And I think a lot of academics on all political sides used to see it that way. And somehow maybe around 20, 30 years ago that it broke and people stopped wanting to have that conversation.
Yeah, they shut the conversation down instead of changing the direction of the conversation or pointing out what should be, what the conversation is missing. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like what I think is interesting about Stoicism, I joked earlier, there's a bunch of old dead white guys. It's like, first off, a lot of them weren't old, but also the Roman Empire included Turkey and Spain and, modern day Iraq and Iran, Africa. Like, it was actually wildly diverse.
Well, I think this whole white thing is super racist, frankly. I mean, I'm Irish on my father's side. I'm Jewish on my mother's side. There's all these nuances. It's just kind of funny to me. Different cultures get all lumped in now.
Oh, totally. And that's my point is that, okay, what I love about Stoicism is, okay, Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, two white guys, right? Except one of them is the emperor of Rome and the other is a slave. So it in one sense not diverse, but also as different a perspective as you could possibly have had.
In some ways more similar maybe to a different race than white if they're being a slave back then. It's just not how it was thought of.
Yeah, and so understanding that these people had a vastly diverse and interesting perspectives from which we can learn so much. Now, what tends to be missing is that it's a very male perspective, right?
That's true. That's true of all history right now.
But what's interesting about the Stoics is there was this debate. Musonius Rufus, who's Epictetus's philosophy teacher, is like, he gives a speech he says, should women be taught philosophy? He says, is virtue the same in men as in women? And he makes this argument, in Rome around the 1st century that virtue is genderless, that courage and justice and wisdom and self-discipline might demonstrate themselves differently in men or women, but it's beautiful in both, right? Or it's necessary in both. And so actually there's an immense amount of progressivism then in the philosophy that, what are you going to celebrate? You're going to celebrate the regressive side, or are you going to look and go, hey, 2,000 years ago, this guy managed to see through all of the prejudice and stereotypes and anachronisms of his time and make a step forward. And then what do you take from that in your own life today?